word or their input on your hiring decision really matters, especially if you're trying to go into the bigger tech companies like Google. There's a whole entire hiring committee where they're going to ask, for example, Ryan, hey, Ryan, how was your interactions with Damien when you first made contact? Like, was he dismissive? Was he an a-hole? Like, how was it? So what I am trying to say is from point A to point Z, from A to Z, it's a behavioral interview. Whether it be an email, whether it be a text message with somebody from the company, your best friend that works there, from A to Z, it's consistently a behavioral interview. And if I'm wrong, Damien can stop me. But I've seen a lot of people where they're boy genius, they're super smart. They can solve every problem on LeetCode, every problem on Code Signal. But when it comes down to it, they say, hey, how was your experience with him? The initial recruiter, the technical source recruiter, and they're like, well, he was an a-hole to me. That's it. You lost your chance. You lost your opportunity. Believe it or not. And I've seen that happen. So first impressions matter. And then the question that you always get asked in a technical interview, technical or not, is tell me about yourself. Right? So a little bit about me. I'm Jayce. I've originally started as a bootcamp grad a long time ago, 2017. I felt like I wanted to learn more, so I went to a second bootcamp that I thought could provide to me better concepts of software engineering. Before I got into tech, I was kind of telling the story to Damien. I don't want to say privileged, but I wasn't fortunate enough to own a computer until my mid 20s. So I had my first computer as the iMac. It was a colored one. I was playing Oregon Trail and I was like trying to get used to it, removing parts of the computer, figuring out like, oh, this is a motherboard, and like this, my dad would hate it, but I never got into it because unfortunately enough, like my house was robbed, so I didn't have a computer. So I got into sports, got into technical stuff. I joined the Marine Corps, became a fireman, but I just didn't like going to the firehouse and everybody was talking about retirement. I was always interested in tech, and I see all these technologies popping up, and I was like, you know what? Let me take the leap of faith. And I decided to take the leap of faith. I did a boot camp. I was researching. I did that. And after the boot camp, I went again to another boot camp. This time, I wanted to go where the action was happening. So if you can see, I was all over the Bay Area, going to school there, networking, and that's a big thing you guys got to do as well if you want to get hired. You have to network. It's not about the hands it's not about the grades you get, but the hands you shake. And I started realizing that this is the way to go. And then I get tips from these people that have made it. Like, hey, what do you suggest I should do? So I decided I looked at technical interviewing as kind of like a battleground, right? You have your enemy over on the other side, which are trying to assess you and trying to see if you're a good fit for their company. And I decided to study the process of it. I looked at it as procedure, like a problem solve, right? I was like, okay, what are they thinking? What's going on? Like, why isn't my resume hitting? Why isn't, all right, my resume is hitting, but I don't get past the initial recruiter 30-minute conversation about me. After that, then the coding challenges, the take-home coding challenges. What about it don't they like? So it was steps and procedures, right? An algorithm that I needed to crack. That's the way I looked at it. So over the course of several years, I was fortunate enough to land at Twitch, and I got at Facebook, and now I'm at Amazon. I was originally at the Amazon Alexa team for machine learning, and I switched over to Prime Video. So that's about me. Can we get someone from the audience to see? If not, it's okay. To tell me about yourself, just one person. Or Damien, tell me about yourself.
Absolutely. So, so the different companies that I've worked at, or the different things that
Right. Let's just
uh,
say
we have
company
give.
Z, right?
Yeah. Skype. That was a tough interview, but it was very fascinating. It was more obvious, more person to person questions, and less of these like different things and all that. Definitely less of those exactly technical questions and all that. Google was just nuts. I mean, the questions always seemed to be ridiculous things, and of course they had create a binary tree in any language you have there. And I'm like, what do I look like? The 1990s? I haven't done a binary tree in 30 years. So,
Right.
but
So
absolutely.
so yeah, so first impressions matter. So just a quick crack at it is how'd you get here, right? Like how did you get to this career, where you're currently at, and why the certain role, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? That's how you should formulate your tell me about yourself, because you're kind of giving importance as to why are you doing the thing you're doing. You don't tell me that you're passionate without telling me that you're passionate about what you're doing, right? So instead of saying I'm very passionate about tech, I'm very passionate, yeah, very passionate, like, okay, how did you get passionate? Like, what was your story? So you're selling yourself, honestly. It's an elevator pitch. There's a whole articles on that. We can get into that way later. But the biggest milestone that everybody probably is hard to crack is, what are technical interviews, right? So the ultimate question that interviewers ask themselves, and at the end of the sheet that they have to fill out, a report, like um, a non-biased form, just super objective, not even subjective, is the only subjective question that we have, or that they have, is can you see yourself working with them? Can you work with this person at the end of it? So throughout your entire interview, you want to make sure that it's a conversation and you don't treat it as a test, and that you want to find out what it would they want to find out what it would feel like to work with you and how to solve a problem together. I cannot tell you how many times I have meetings throughout the day to solve something so simple, or even naming a variable. What should we name a variable? Because it's like, oh my God, like, don't just write check, right? Check for blah, 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 blah. Like, be very descriptive. Does this matter? Like, it's like harder than naming your own kids.
Uh,
um,
Absolutely, JC. I've seen 1,000 meetings like that.
so they also want to see, how do you approach problems? Like, what is it like working on a team together, and how do you collaborate to build a working solution with the interviewer? So look at the interviewer as your comrade, as your buddy, as like you're working on this problem together, and let's work together. That's pretty much like, don't treat it as a test and be like staying quiet, like collaborate with them. They're not gonna be there like, I hope he messes up. They're not. They want to get good signal. So speaking about signal, the goal of a coding interview is to get signal on things that their own engineering teams and across the whole organization, like, and what they do every day. So it's pretty much like, okay, yeah, I can definitely see this person going up to a whiteboard and like solving a problem. I mean, virtual now, like having a discussion. Can you build diagrams? It doesn't have to be professional like it used to be, like UMLs and like, you know, BRDs or any of that. But it's just like, oh, I'm thinking about the data flowing from this service package over to here. Like, this is what I'm thinking about. And pretty much that's it. They want to get signals. They want to get signals on how you think and how you tackle hard problems and how you communicate about code. They want to evaluate your problem solving skills and to see if you can translate, thought into reasonably correct and well-structured code. Not like 20 different if statements and like, writing pseudocode in there and like just super sloppy, not keeping it dry, keeping the simple engineering principles of dry and kiss and things like that. And basically, do you consider engineering trade-offs? For a technical interview, is basically memory versus time, which is big O notation. And if you guys don't know that, you don't need to know the mathematics behind it. You just need to know like, oh, this iterates through this array once. It's an O of n. So, and then they also want to push you to the limits of what you know. So basically more in like system design questions, you're going to see like, hey, this solution is a better memory allocation, has a better, it uses our resources better. It auto scales better, like this problem, but, oh no, but this solution B is better. We get all of these benefits, and we lose less. So they're completely different, but for technical interviews of doing like LeetCode problems, majority of the time, they just want to see if you do engineering trade-offs because those are good signals, right? For us interviewers and just people at tech companies, they just want to see, are you a good fit? Are you get hired? Can we work with you? And we're always trying to be, are you like frugal in a way? Like, are you going to be considering like, hey, you know what? I thought this solution was better, but it looks like we're using more memory usage in these EC2 instances all across the board, and we're wasting a ton of money. Why won't we try this and use Fargate, for example, and it's less money? And so do you have engineering trade-offs and thought? So what do they look for? Again, your interviewer will be thinking about how your skills and experience might help their team. Help them understand the value you could bring by focusing on these traits and abilities. So can you communicate? You know, some examples in a technical interview would be, are you asking for requirements, clarification when necessary? Or are you just diving into code? How do you problem solve? By evaluating on how you comprehend and explain complex ideas. They want to see how you code. Can you convert your solutions, your pseudocode, your thought process into executable code that it's organized, structured, and can capture the right logical structure? And verification, which is the most important. I cannot tell you how many times I solve the solution, but then it comes, bam, I get slapped with testing. And like, we estimate like, oh, this task is going to take me 2 days. And we're like, no, it's going to take you an entire week because of unit testing, integration testing, end-to-end load test, stress test. Like, is it available? Is it scalable? And is it secure? Right. So verification is one of the most important. So a number of reasonable test cases. Are you coming up with a good argument for why your code is correct? You submit code and you say, I tested it in my local dev environment. It works. I know it does. Well, I have trust issues. I don't know you and I don't trust you. How did you verify that? So unit tests, scaling, and are you going to have all our customers using your local host? And you like pass it around to 1 million people? So, and sure, you know, like let's say you don't have time to write unit tests or any small little test cases, you know, walk me through your own logic and explain to me why is your code doing the thing it's doing and why is it correct? So do not start coding straight away when given a problem. Do not do that. It is an automatic red flag and we're just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We'll tell you to stop. Like, hey, can you please help me walk through? We'll tell you the first time, it's kind of like a freebie, but then the second time around, we'll be like, okay, you know what? Check. Red flag. So don't start coding straight away. And basically you have about an hour, sometimes 45 minutes, but before you start coding, you want to take about 5 minutes to communicate properly, design your algorithm, and structure on working the clock. During coding, you want to write code. If it's on a whiteboard, it's on a whiteboard, or if it's on an IDE, it's on an IDE. I think now we're using IDEs, we're not using whiteboards. So talk through your code and solution, handle mistakes, and test your code, and then ask questions. So before we move on, does anybody have any questions on that? Let me, I can't see.
And
That seems
unfortunately,
to.
well, I'll be able to talk with questions with the chat, but if you don't mind, everybody you can ask in the chat because of what happened a bit earlier. We have some questions from James as far as pseudocode. Do you think it's all right to write in pseudocode? I mean, if it's clean pseudocode, if it answers the questions they're talking about. JC,
It's
what do you think?
for Sag and for Sagiv, hoorah.
Yeah.
uh,
Nice.
0331. Okay, so hold on, I'm looking through it. Binary trees didn't change your kid's name. You can't change a variable's name. Yes and no. Offering solutions is a bonus. After offering your solution, there's a bonus. All right, well, we're gonna get into that, James, and then that pseudocode did become the comments. So
I
about
like that,
pseudocode.
Sebastian.
So about pseudocode, yes, you can pseudocode it, but you have to get code written. You have to get code written. Do not rely on that. I mean, if you want to break into big tech, if there's a gameplay here where you're competing against a lot of people around the world. So you're gonna have somebody from the United States, somebody from Canada, somebody from, I don't know, from wherever else that are literally training day in and day out. The more you sweat, the less you bleed in battle, right? So all I gotta say is practice coding as much as you can. So pseudocode is great. It explains to us your thought process, but just make sure that you have a working, executable, readable code if you want to break into big tech. So that's my answer to that. The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle. I think Sagiv can back me up on that. So before coding, you want to communicate, design your algorithm. Oh, wait. Do you have any tips for mental stamina at the final interview? Honestly, I mean, we'll get into all of that because we're just in the beginning of the presentation. But, I used to think like, you know what? Like, I'll just grind it out. You're going to get burned out. Like, I remember like it was 6 hours. It was 6 hours for me at the final round interview for Amazon. And like, I was fried. I didn't want to even look at a computer for like a month. And just for purposes of legality and stuff like that, I forgot to mention this, but my opinions are my own. I do not speak on behalf of Amazon or its subsidiaries. So I just wanted to make sure of that.
Or me. Oh, wait, no. I agree with most of the things you're saying so far, seriously.
So try to finish. So, yeah. Okay. So let's get moving. Shoot. Okay. So before coding, remember, first approximately 5 minutes. So communicate proactively. It's a lot, but I'll grind them through. I try to make these bullet points and as much as concise as possible, but you got to make your first 5 minutes count. And honestly, like I have to just reiterate all of this. It's just basically reading it off because I was like, these were like 2-3 sentences each, and I just concise them to the point that I still have to read it over. So rule number 1, do not start coding straight away. Can't emphasize that enough. So what does proactive communication mean? Is any communication taken before you start coding. So as you see, it sets the tone so that you can show what you know. In all interviews, engineers are evaluating not only your technical abilities, but also on how you approach problems and how you communicate about them and how you try to solve them. So analyze the problem. If you're given this array, find the adjacent pair of product that's the largest or whatever. I'm just spitballing here. Don't just be like, I've done this before, I can do it, Don't start, because there might be added complexities that you don't know. So analyze the problem before jumping into building a solution. Be sure you've taken the time to fully understand and talk through the problem. Don't assume that the question is easy. Repeat the question and rephrase it in your own words. The interviewer will clarify if necessary. So I just gave you, hey, can you find the adjacent pair of these two numbers in an array that is the maximum product, right? And you're like, oh, dude, just rephrase it. Just say, so you're asking me to go through this array and find adjacent. Like, you might not even know what adjacency means. Sometimes I don't know. And be like, does that mean that they're next to each other, that they're separate? Like, they're like, no, that they're literally right next to each other. They're shoulder to shoulder. Okay, so adjacent. So two numbers adjacent. Just rephrase the problem, whatever the problem is. All information that is given is necessary to solve the problem. So listen to your interviewer very attentively. So the interviewer is saying, might even throw some hints there. Many of the questions are asked are open-ended because engineers are looking to see how you break down and approach the problem. So for example, I was given this problem at one of the big tech companies, specific problem. That's why I can name the company, but they were like, you have a computer that infected a computer, and that computer can infect an n number of computers, and those computers can infect other ones. How do you find how do you find the first computer that was infected? And I stood there like in blank, like, what? And then I had to draw it out, right? And you start drawing it out, you start asking questions, and then the problem starts showing itself. Like, how do I get this information? I literally asked, I was like, can I just do like a query to search for time and dates and see which computer first reported itself? They're like, no, you can't do that. So you're actually given this data. So as you start asking questions and start rephrasing it, the problem will start revealing itself. So additional tips, ask clarifying questions and state assumptions. Don't just say, oh, I know for a fact it's going to be this, because it might not even be that. Now either you added more complexity to your problem by you assuming it and running with it, or you underscope the problem and now you're not solving. They're going to throw a test case in there that's going to break your code. So state assumptions. Many of the questions asked in interviews are deliberately underspecified because engineers are looking to see how you engage the problem. Talk to the problem, ask follow-up questions, take a minute to think about, what is the optimal solution to help you to land an optimal solution. If you just have a brute force solution, that's perfectly fine. And you say, hey, I can't think of an optimal solution, I'm pretty sure there's another optimal solution, then you can state that. So ask a lot of questions, clarifying questions, most important, like just validate and state your assumptions. Like, okay, are all the numbers in this array a type integer? Can they be string or floats or doubles or longs? Like what can we pass the infinity mark of what computers can handle as a number? Like how do we, you see what I'm saying? Like you always want to state assumptions like that, because they're not always going to be constrained to like 1,000 is your max. They're gonna be like, no, just don't worry about anything past 1,000. It was funny because I don't care. Microsoft was so funny. They were like this infinite plane, and you have kind of like Battleship, right? Where would you start and how would you find the other dot in this infinity plane? I was like, you want me to write that in code? And they're like, yeah. I was like, well, that's impossible because computers are not infinite. There's a limited time. It was kind of a smart ass response, but then we scoped it down and they're like, okay, well, point is state assumptions, ask clarifying questions, and the problem will reveal to you. So steps of designing your algorithm, right? Think out loud, talk, shit, like I can't explain it. Talk out loud. Don't just stand there like this. Hold on. This is funny. Don't do that. It's just weird. We're just like, okay. So you can start with the brute force solution. That's perfectly fine, as I said before. Take a minute and think and process your solution approach out loud. Make sure that you are not taking more than 2 minutes to solve it in your head without saying a word. And talk through the problem and approach with your interviewer. So like some tips that I've found very helpful. This is just psychology. Is use words like we are instead of I and my. So kind of invite them like, hey, you know what we should do? You know, like things like that. Just sound collaborative. Invite them in. You want to get to the simplest solution as quickly as possible. There are no magic approaches to solving every tricky algorithmic problem. One thing that I learned the hard way is it's not going to be like, oh shit, I'm a master now. Like I literally get a problem at work now and I'm just standing there like, how the hell am I ever going to solve this? Like I'm still like, I get nervous. I'm still there sitting like, oh shoot, like, okay, sorry. I'll get to the questions now, to the chat. I'm literally standing there in my computer when I get this like, hey, JC, you need these are your 3 tickets for this week. And I'm looking at them and I'm reading the description. Sometimes there's just one sentence is fixed dashboard. You're just like, what the fuck? Like I question myself, like, why am I here? I don't even know how to solve this. There's no magic approach. I literally just the scientific method of approaching problems, of solving problems, your hypothesis, your validating statements, and you test, right, to validate your hypothesis of what, like, it's just the scientific method of thinking. So there's no magic approach. There's no way of like one size fits all. And it's just a pro tip, you know, think out loud for sure. Use words and language like we and our, invite them in. Don't be like, I think my solution. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but this is just a little bit more collaborative thinking. Yeah. One quote I like to use is, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Don't like jam in there and be like, oh my God, I need to think of a perfect while loop. Like the perfect if statement to end my while loop and I'll solve it. Like, don't do that. If you need a Barney style, the whole thing, do that. Take interviewer tips seriously. They're trying to give you helpful hints. Explain thought process and decision making throughout your interview out loud. If you're at home, you have your cameras off, you have a camera on. Read the blue line right here. What does that say? Oh shoot. Read it. I want to see your lips move.
We see it. We do this. You know, Sebastian brought up a very interesting thing is, you know, being an introvert, it's hard for him to think out loud. And not that I'm an introvert, but I comprehend that question. What have you seen, JC, some suggestions for people that have a hard time, like you said, sort of speaking what they're thinking?
Yeah, let me get the
sure.
clocks. Okay. Okay. So I get stage fright, you know, like this to me is practice too. Like I'm not like an expert in presenting, but doing things like this, talking to your dog, I don't know, you guys probably heard the famous rubber duck, right? Like my kids, my dogs were like my coding buddies. I would literally talk out loud, even in my room alone. I used to sit in my dormitory in San Francisco and like, I'll get on LeetCode and look at a problem, even though I know it's so easy. I'll literally think, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a for loop and I write it out. I even type it out. I could show you examples of me typing paragraphs of how I would solve a problem, me rephrasing the problem. So typing it out, if you're an introvert, talking to yourself, because when you're in an interview and you have an IDE open, you're not going to have the camera showing. So just talk to them. Like just talk, like if you were talking to yourself. I say relax and think that.
Yeah, right. James, that's a famous saying, which is James said in the chat, imagine everybody naked. I think it all depends on what it is. It's supposed to be a way to thank you and relax you. But if it works for you, that's fine. I think the majority of us would be a little bit weird if we were the only one in the room and everybody else was naked.
Right. So remember, so communication isn't always verbal, right? You can be visual. You can use diagrams. You can illustrate the problem at a high level approach. And we can go into that later. So literally on your IDE, you can have like a ticker move and like, this is what my algorithm is doing. So, but tips on being an introvert, just talk out loud by yourself in your room. I'm pretty sure you probably sing in the bathroom. So just talk out loud. Have a piece of paper and talk out loud the problem and be like, okay, these are my steps. Step one, I'm blah, blah, blah. And focus on getting a working solution first. Acknowledge the brute force solution. So if you do have two options, be like, hey, I thought of this brute force solution. This is like O of n squared, but this is a better way if I use this hash table for like memory allocating and searching, which searching in a hash table is O of 1. It brings down my runtime to O of n, but my engineering trade-off is a hash table now that I need to store data in is an O of n space, and to create it is O of n runtime. So that's my engineering trade-off of having a more optimal solution versus the brute force solution for like a two-sum problem, right? So explain time and space complexity. If you don't know what time and space complexity is at this moment, don't worry about it. There's like a 5-minute crash course on YouTube that you can literally watch and you'll be an expert by the end of 5 minutes. And always, so explaining about the engineering trade-offs is like, just ask yourself, can we do better? So think about solutions that optimize for time and space complexity, again, trade-offs, and directly ask the interviewer, hey, what are we optimizing for? Do you care if we have an O of n squared solution? Literally ask them. You're not asking for hints. You're asking them the what's called the acceptance criteria. So are like, hey, is this acceptable? Can we do a O of n solution here? And don't worry about the most efficient way to solve the problem. If brute force is all you can do, that is perfectly fine. Just know that, hey, I know we can do better, but it's not something I can code right now. And then they'll push you to your limit to get to that level. So communicate your design trade-offs, state the time and space complexity, annotate chunks of your code if you have to, and explain any trade-offs to your current approach and any other alternative approach, and share different options. So another tip is do not start coding until you're given the green light. Say, hey, I found the solution. This is what I'm going to do. Is it okay for me to start coding? They're going to be like, yeah, perfectly get what you're going to code. So literally ask them, like, is it okay for me to start coding? And that's it. Don't just be like, yeah, this is my solution, and then you start coding or whatever, typing. Like literally ask them, invite them, be respectable, and that goes a long way.
JC, is that also because of the fact that you want to make sure that you understood the problem correctly? Is that why you're asking? Correct. Also?
You also want to, exactly. So you're also saying, hey, this is my solution. Do you need me to clarify anything else about my approach? Can I start coding? So it's also like kind of giving the green light. You're asserting they're giving you the thumbs up that yes, I understood your approach. Let's code it. So yeah, again, even if you only finish the less efficient solution and then explain how you can do better, that's not bad. That's not a bad answer. They're not going to expect you to come up with the O of 1 solution or the log n solution. So the tips of people always ask is, how do you solve quickly? Like, how do you just get on it, get on an ID, see a problem, just like, I know this, practice, 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 right? So I think this is a good checkpoint to look at the chat to see if anybody has any questions.
Well, you do that. I'll remind everybody. James suggested a book, "Cracking the Coding Interview" by Gail Lickman, I think it is. McDowell.
McDowell. Yeah.
Do you know it well, JC?
Yes, I do know it.
Excellent.
She actually gave us.
James is showing it to us.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah,
James, the book looks like it's matching your green screen behind you.
Yeah, Gail McDowell. Yeah, you know, she's famous for that, for cracking the coding interview book. And there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of problems, different approaches that you can do. It's just, I'm literally giving you the synopsis of it here. It's like across the board, because what are they looking for, right? If you're taking the interviewer's input, like, hey, you can do this, or hey, you know, you should try this, or you're teaching the interviewer, or vice versa, and it's just collaborative. They don't care if you can solve it right away, right? They're can I work with this person? Sure, I can work with this person, but now the next signal is this person coachable? Can other people give him pointers of how to solve a better problem, or how to solve the problem better? And are they going to be combative? Like, no, my solution is, they're married to their solution. Like, can you take different input and, you know, evolve your approach by other people's input, by diverse input, and be like, yeah, this is a better solution. Thank you for giving me that. They want to see if you're coachable. They want to see if there's room for you to grow. They want to see, and if they can work with you. Are you going to be so fixated on your way of doing it that you're not giving room for other people's input? All right, so yeah, so tips for getting a working solution quickly: practice. And my number one tip is just focus on getting a working solution first. Doesn't matter if it's brute force, doesn't matter if it's the most optimal, just get a working solution first. Considerable approaches. You know, once you start practicing a lot, these are 4 different areas you're going to start. Like, oh shoot, okay, you can start pattern matching. You're going to be like, wow, this problem is similar to a knapsack problem, the shortest path, right? Oh, with shortest path, I can use a breadth first search. Because the depth first search, I'm looking for all possible solutions, but I just need the most optimal. With breadth first search does that. So you're going to start pattern matching. And believe me, I wasn't this smart. I was a 2.7 GPA, and my ASVAB score was through the floor. So I was not a smart cookie. But yeah, pattern matching, simplify and generalize. So if you have a big sample input, break it down to something smaller and be like, okay, I can solve it like this. If you're doing anything with recursive, is just have a base case and build from there. And then once you're thinking about the approach, you're going to be like, okay, can I use a linked list for this? Can I use a hash table? Can I use an array? Can I get away with an array? Can I get away with a queue? Can I get away with a stack? Am I going to add too much complexity? Sure, I can use a graph, but is it needed? You know, like, you start data structure brainstorming. So working the clock. So let's break it down. You got the clock. You got 45 minutes, just about. Usually interviewers like to leave 5 minutes at the end for you to ask any questions about the company. But when I was getting involved, it was 45 minutes. Give yourself 5 minutes for introductions. Remember, tell me about yourself. Then the next 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes, about questions. So you really have about 35-ish minutes to solve around 2 problems. So within those 17 minutes for the first problem is 5 minutes to do everything to do before you start coding. Then you got about 10 minutes within coding. And you got about approximately 2 minutes to test. And then you repeat the cycle. Rinse, wash, and repeat. So a few notes to consider is ideally, you will solve about 2 problems in 45-minute window. This is for big tech. Remember, some companies are a little bit different. Some companies just give you 1 problem. And this is for mainly entry level and junior levels. But as you go higher or you go into a different, more specific realm in your engineering career, they're going to ask you specifically about like, hey, tell me about React. Tell me about the component lifecycle. Like they're going to want to see your in-depth understanding of the technologies you're using. So this gives them more signal and how you can tackle hard problems, engineering trade-offs, communicate, and better calibrate on your limits. What are your limits? But it is okay if you don't. So don't worry about solving 2 problems. It's just better if they do, so they have more data. Remember, us engineers, we are data driven. We're not going to make a change in the source code in prod because someone likes the color green just because they like the color green. We want to see what's the data backing that. If the button is green, we're going to get more clicks. What's the data behind it? What's the data that backs us hiring this person? But it's okay if you don't. A good interviewer will stretch your mind to see what your limits are. You might even be asked to complete a follow-up activity. So during coding is writing code, talking through your coded solution, handling mistakes. So again, when you have a solution, you're ready to go, you get the green light. Now, how do you type? How do you code? You want to articulate, once you have the solution, say, yeah, cool, I can iterate, do this, do that, do this, do that. Your ability to articulate your ideas clearly is necessary to judge how well you communicate. Writing clearly will help you avoid confusion and catch mistakes early on. I know a lot of bigger tech companies do not use an IDE that does like autocomplete or a linter for you. So make sure you know that language that you pick, their coding conventions and best practices. So if you're using Python and you're following the pip 8, make sure you're using either double space throughout or 4 spaces throughout. If you're using C#, your curly braces begin at the bottom and not next to the function declaration or method declaration when you're using Java. So like if you're using a language specific thing, make sure you're following convention. If you're using JavaScript, don't use a var, use const let. So just little conventions, little nuances like that you got to really follow to your language specific. Avoid solutions with a lot of edge cases, like if else blocks. Use descriptive variable names. That also is a very good indicator that we're not going to have to sit down for an hour and debate about naming our variable. Think about data structures and consider different algorithms and algorithm techniques such as sorting, divide and conquer, recursion, dynamic programming, etc. So yeah, practice makes better. There's no substitute. Outline the structure of your solution, include high-level functions. So if you have this crazy problem that you need to do, write helper functions. Hey, you know what? I'm going to write what's called a stub. Input data here, spits out this, and then continue on like if it was already there. Then go back to your helper functions and like break your problem down. Don't just have like 100 lines in one function. Like break it out and see what you can like move around. Decoupling, in other words. Writing pseudocode first may help you outline your thoughts clearly and reduce the number of mistakes you can commit. So sure, pseudocode, but you want to get code into there, as the next bullet point says. You want real code on there. Don't crowd your code. This is for like whiteboard tips. Don't start from the upper left corner and work your way through so you can like annotate different things. use a lot of white spaces, leave yourself plenty of room, and use built-in library functions and methods. So if you can get away with a built-in sort method, just know how it works under the hood. Like this is a temp sort. It's a n log n algorithm complexity. Don't write the sorting function for us because you're going to waste a lot of time. That just shows to us that you don't know the language very well. So use built-in functions. Like I think Java and Python as well has a way to use a priority queue, and you can do that. Use a heap as well. It has built-in library for heaps. It has a built-in library for graphs. So instead of you building the entire edge and vertices and everything that's going to go into building a graph, you can get away with built-in functions. But remember, don't just make the assumption that you can do that. Ask like, hey, Python has a sorting method and I can use this little if-else statement here and it does the sorting for me. Can I use that, or do you want me to write a sorting algorithm for you? So it's good to ask. You're validating and stating assumptions, and it's showing that you know the language very well. Sorry, I got 3 comments here.
JC, I can also help and interrupt at certain times if there are certain comments. Some of them are comments you can address or comments based upon what you were saying, agreeing with
you. Yeah.
Like Sebastian says, the 2 biggest problems in computer science is naming things, invalidating caching, and off by 1 errors. Those are the 2 things.
Off by 1 errors, yeah. I mean, there's other problems you're going to run into when.
No, those are the 2 things: naming things, invalidating caches, and off by 1 errors.
Just about.
I said 3 things. Yeah.
So, yeah, talk through your coded solution. Keep calm. So for my introverts out there, keep calm, think out loud. See the interviewers or collaborators. They want to know what it's like they want to know what it feels like to work with you. As I mentioned before, use we instead of I. I don't know why I have that there, but it's weird. R instead of my. Look up from the whiteboard or from your IDE. I mean, if you have a camera, and talk to your interviewer, make eye contact, catch nonverbal cues. So if the interviewer is going like this, then be like, oh, did you not like that? Like what, your interviewer doesn't know what's going on in your head. So think out loud. Walk your interviewer through your solution and approach. Again, they want to see how you tackle hard problems and when you're stuck. And as you step through your code, as you're talking through your code, you're going to catch mistakes. You're going to be like, okay, I wanted to do a for loop here, and I wanted to do an if statement. And when I do an if statement here, and this is valid, oh, shoot, I wasn't doing that here. So you're going to catch your own mistakes. Tell them when you're not sure. Let them know what you thought would work and why it doesn't if you strike out. So you're going through it, you're talking about it, and you're like, man, I thought that would work. Tell them hey, you know what? I thought by going through this and that, just don't be like, I don't know. Literally just be like, I don't know. Don't do that. Be more like, hey, I thought this was going to work because, and what's the this, right? You want to explain what the this I thought was going to work. Don't appear like you know something when you don't. Don't be like, yeah, I definitely know that when you don't. It's a cringe moment. Instead say, I'm not sure, but I guess I can blank here because of blank. The because is important. It's an opportunity to rule out other options with poor trade-offs. Hold on. So don't forget to talk while you code. Crucial to help your interviewer understand your choices and thought process. Be prepared to talk about time and space constraints, matters of big O notation, draw out a sample input, use different inputs, catch bugs. It helps you catch bugs faster. So like, oh, if I put a negative, if I put a string, if I put this, if I put such a short number. If you aren't talking, an interviewer doesn't know what you are thinking. This will help you avoid careless mistakes or catch them when they happen. So I can't emphasize it enough. I sound like a broken record, but think out loud, even when you're stuck. Ask questions, not for hints. Don't be like, hey, can you give me a hint? Never do that. Be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Could I use a for whatever it is? And then be like, no, you can use this. I meant when you're stumped, ask questions that helps identify the path moving forward. So ask questions that help you proceed forward. Don't rush. The time frame I give you is a guideline, not a rule, if that makes sense. Don't be like, oh my God, it's 5 minutes up. Fuck, I can't ask any more questions. Reiterate the bounds. Don't forget to communicate. Explain trade-offs. Like if you have only a brute force solution, that's perfectly fine. So handling mistakes, real life development is iterative. It's okay to make mistakes. Just make sure you catch them. Be like, hey, you know what? This is actually a mistake here. I'm going to be off by 1. The trick to doing well is just staying calm and maintaining a professional composure. Don't do what I do, which is like, fuck, don't do that. Just be like, stay calm, look at the problem and explain it to them. Interviewers know that interviews are stressful. We have to go through them. Bugs are almost guaranteed when you're problem solving in real time while you're also programming. So keep calm, think out loud, acknowledge the mistakes, explain how to fix it. Say, hey, you know what, this is a mistake, and explain yourself why it's the better thing. And implement the correction. If an interviewer spots an error and you can't find it, it's okay. It's just listen carefully and adjust your solution to their recommendations. Do not try to appear like you know something when you don't. I can emphasize a lot how that makes you look bad. So this is an opportunity to demonstrate on how you tackle hard problems. So don't panic, and then everyone loses their minds. So stuck, this is some other helpful tips. It doesn't mean you fail. Draw pictures, ask questions, think out loud. So the benefits of thinking out loud and like talking out loud, it's kind of helps you slow down and kind of like gives yourself time to work through the problem and solution. Call helper functions if you need to solve a simpler version of the problem, and propose a solution that's naive and potentially inefficient. Consider optimizations later. Use brute force, do whatever it takes to a working solution first. So if you don't have, you're like, man, I know this can be better, just tell them that, hey, you know what, I'm going to work through the brute force and then we can optimize later. We can work it through, we can iterate through the problem. Styling mistakes to avoid. Write code other team members can pick up from where you left off. So I forgot who made this code. I think it was from a book on refactoring. Is computers are stupid, so don't write code for computers. Write code for the next person that jumps on your code. I forgot how the quote goes, but you're essentially just writing code for other people to jump on and read it and work on it. So I forgot what company it was that they had one engineer there that wrote it in his own thing. He literally had his own map legend to his software, and the person quit, left from this earth, and now they have to restart from scratch. I can't tell you when I was a freelancer how many times I've gotten code and I was just like, dude, I don't even know where to begin. There's no documentation on this. The code is, the variables are I's and E's and different single letter things. I thought they compiled it, but no, I can't begin to tell you. You want to write code for others, not for the computer. So give descriptive names to variables, functions, etc. Stick to your language naming convention. So if it's Python, it's snake case. If it's JavaScript, it's camel case. Exactly. There's a sociopath that knows where you live.
Well, I remember that there's a problem with that. So never use that line that that Sebastian quoted, which is, imagine the next person to see your code is sociopath. Imagine that that's not the problem. My problem's not going to be that there's a bad guy that's going after me. My problem's going to be that in a month or two, when I look at my code, it's going to be me. And I have to continue on with it. And that's why you should write good code, because the likelihood of you touching the code again is very high. And the likelihood of you remembering it is very low.
Right. So another thing is randomly mixing coding standards, signal sloppiness, use consistent naming conventions. Don't do long methods. Don't duplicate your code. Excessive commenting, and here I'm going to return a variable, and then you put return variable here. Don't do that. Right. Loosely coupled code. Don't use defensive coding. If it's not, you only do that in production code mainly, but not in technical interviews. This leads to more complicated code that is harder to understand and debug. So after coding, test your code. I think I'm gonna do a checkpoint here for anything that we cover, because there's a lot. It's an information overload for sure. They're not exclusive. Does anybody have any questions? Anything?
No, I can answer Steve's jobs, which is, you're right. The next person could be me, and I might be the psychopath, and I do know where I live. So, but even then, that you should worry about the next person being yourself. You see, I remember that the saying was that computers, no matter how good or bad the code is, computers read it and don't care. So you're coding, you're writing for other humans, because it's other humans truly that are reading your code. At the very end, it's just zeros and one, and that's really what the computer sees. The code is for humans.
Right. Okay, no questions. So you're done. Woohoo! You're done. You got a working solution. Yay! No. Want to test your damn code? Come up with test cases with your interviewer. Collaborate. So actually, it's funny enough. An interviewing tip is pro challenge, but write your test cases before you start coding. So this is my working solution, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, hey, where I'm going to write these scenarios. You put your input array, you have 1, 2, blah, blah, blah. You already have your test cases done, and then code out your solution, and then be like, so that's called test-driven development. You first write your test, develop, fails, reiterate, go in that cycle. So that's one little pointer that can be very positive feedback on the interview. Like, oh shit, he wrote his test cases first. So an original solution that you can come up with can cause anyone to second guess your approach. Testing will demonstrate that your solution works. Explain your answer to your interviewer, walk through your solution by hand, out loud, give examples, find bugs, clear up, blah, blah, blah. So failing to test your code is a quick way not getting a call back, especially in big tech. If you do not test your code, you're done. It's just like, all right, well, I'm done. Here you go. You're going to submit the PR and you fail. Write down what values the variables hold as the programming is running. They'll make the interviewer do the intellectual heavy lifting. It's a huge plus if you write tests for your code without being prompted. So if you're like, hey, I want to test my code, I want to do this input and this is my expected output, and you're the one that's doing all the heavy lifting, you're the one that came up telling him we should test this, I don't even trust my code. I have trust issues. They're going to be like, great, that's a great signal. That's a great thing. So more test cases, right? So you got different types of test cases you can do. So you can come up with small test cases, step through your code. You can have general, just what's called the happy path, which is just like, this is the perfect scenario that happens. Bam. And then you have extreme cases like zeros, negatives, maximums, minimums, nulls, blah, blah, blah. You pass in an object. You pass in something that's not the correct type if you're doing strict typing environment. For example, JavaScript and TypeScript, right? So you can, so yeah, user error. What if they write dog instead of cat? Like things like that. So ask questions at the end of your interview. So at the end, pro tip, research the company, research their core values, and mainly talk about, just always have written down 2 to 3 questions you want to ask the interviewer at the end of the whole thing. You want to make sure you ask questions because that shows interest in the company. That shows that you care about where you land, not just like, I want to land at Google because I want to be a resume junkie, or I want to be at Amazon because it's just Amazon, and I want to have Amazon on my LinkedIn and look cool or whatever. Just be like, I want to solve real world problems and impact millions of customers. How do you do that in your day-to-day? Oh no, I work in an internal tooling system, like an internal tool that helps my downstream team. Okay, but that helps them impact customers of Prime Video, for example. So like, okay, tell me about that. Tell me about internal tooling. Like, how do you keep the standard as from it? Because a lot of internal tools at different companies are garbage. We mainly care about external customers, but so things like that, like ask questions about the company. Like, I mean, I was at a interview not that long ago, and I was grilling the engineering director about like, what's your test processes like? And I found out that for me, it wasn't a great fit because it's too much of a risk to join the company like that. Like it was just, in other words, they had like a ton of product. They was just throw a bunch of things at the wall and see what stuck. And to me, that's risky. What if I join one of the product teams that they just throw and didn't stick? They're going to lay me off. So when you ask a lot of questions like that, it opens the door to understanding of where that company is or how the team operates. Don't ask questions like, what's the culture like? Because that is very generic. And to me, I'll be like, oh, what do you mean about the culture? Like, what do you want to know? Like, what do you care about the culture? Like, do you care that we're rigorous in our code reviews? Do you care? What about the culture do you care about? So ask questions to the interviewer. So a few tips I have imposter syndrome still. Here's the good news. You're not an imposter. Familiarity will calm your nerves. Be sure to simulate the experience with more mock interviews from peers. So when I first visited Boca Code, I saw that Todd was doing mock interviews, and just, hey, they're there as a resource, like ask your friends, mock interview. Shit, when I was looking for work, wow, 2 years ago, shit. When I was like, it's been a minute. I had to pay out of pocket for somebody to mock interview me. I was that type of loser. No friends. So I had to pay somebody else to mock interview me, and then like, hey, please write me a feedback. Like, well, how can I help? So to all my people, everybody, my audience now, people that are going to watch this later on or whatever, like, how badly do you want it? You know what I mean? Like, simple as that. A lot of people step in the yellow footprints to be Marines, and they can't be Marines because they don't put in the work as a pulley to make it through. So like, even with this, you want to be an engineer. There's a reason why there's the high paying salary bands are high, because not everybody can do this. People like the idea of it, but like, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to sugarcoat it like, hey man, dude, all you need is this presentation and that's it. Like, this is just kind of like an eye opener to help you. I mean, you guys have a great resources, like a resource like Damien that has been in the industry since the freaking 80s and 90s. Like that's your...
yeah. I was going to say, let's leave that, the exact date out.
But like, it's an amazing resource that you guys have, and utilize that. Talk to yourself, like that's what I did. And, so stay calm. The internal dialogue that you have is not reality. Don't be like, oh my God, like I was a freaking chef before this. But pick out, because I have friends that were chefs before, like sous chefs. I'm like, dude, in order to be a sous chef, I'm not a chef. I can't cook for shit. But a sous chef has to pay attention to detail. They look at a plate before it exits out to the, to the patron that's waiting for their food. You're like, oh shoot, there's hair there. Like use that skill of paying attention to detail, being so meticulous about things in code. Like there's a lot of transferable skills from like your past careers, or this is your only career that you have. So stay calm, think out loud. You already did the hard work of even learning what an IDE was. So hard work outbeats perfection. Nobody knows everything. Set realistic expectation goals and celebrate progress. So every milestone you hit, like, shit, you know what? Like, I wrote my first test case. Celebrate that. Like that, it's good for the endorphins and all that other stuff. So let's recap. Think first, code second. Communicate your design trade-offs. Keep calm, think out loud. 4, focus on getting a working solution first. Optimize later. Test your solution. Your interview is a conversation, not a test. So with that, any questions, you can use the QR code, or you guys want to follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, whatever the kids say these days.
Very, very nice, JC. I think QR codes are something I've been passionate about, along with NFCs, not NFTs, for a long time. Because of what's happening here, I might, let's try this. We can only make ourselves in trouble here. So surprisingly, you can unmute yourself, but you can also tap in chat. So I'll have my trigger button ready to unmute you. But if you wish to unmute yourself, please do so. If you wish, by the way, JC, fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. I've had a lot of things, like even for the last thing you've said with imposter syndrome, it was truly amazing that I walked into Skype. I thought I got the job. I thought I got it by the nails, by just the what's it called? The little, I just barely got in. And a month into it, my boss gives me a review. And he says, Damien, in your interview, you just blew us away. And so you never know how they're feeling on the other side of that interview desk. And you may have gotten it. Even the jobs you don't get, you may have gotten it, and the position just simply was closed, or they had to be given to the owner's nephew, because, we got to keep it in the family.
Oh my God.
So,
nepotism.
Hey, this is Florida, so we get that sometimes. But
no,
absolutely.
Cafecito con el fulano de tal. Yeah.
Sí, imagínate cuántas veces. So absolutely. And I love the fact you put your contact in there. So please, if you have any questions, we're getting a lot of, including the people that I had to block out. You are now able to unmute yourself should you wish, but we have a chat in there. Daniel says, once I heard the awesome definition of imposter syndrome, being that this only happens when people grow exponentially but think of themselves as being static. So there's disparity. I don't even know how you say that word. You feel is actually thank you. It's actually a good thing. A person that doesn't grow doesn't get imposter syndrome. I love that, Daniel. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for joining us as well for that. I'm sure I could have said it much better than that. JC, that's fantastic. Does anybody else have any comments? You can always interrupt me.
Okay, I think I do. So the conversation is more like so the test is more like leading a development team to solve a solution, and the interviewer is supposed to be the team lead, or at least it can be viewed that way.
Yeah,
I can think of it that way.
JC, what do you think about that? Do you feel that, since you're part of the team, since they're there to interview you, not to test you, like you said, in conversation, Do you see that as the developer lead?
Like the interviewee is a developer lead?
Yeah, it's just a way of thinking about it. That's how James sees it. And when, because you said it should have conversation, they're both on your side. Nobody's against you in any part of the interview. So should we think of them as that?
Well, at least at least solving the problem.
Yeah. So us as an engineer, like whenever we get like a ticket or to solve something and to continue working on or whatever, we take full control of whatever that ticket is. So regardless if you're real tech lead, your principal engineer, your SDM, your manager, senior dev than you, they leave room for you to do it. So this is kind of viewed that way as well. I wouldn't labeling it as tech lead. It's kind of a far stretch, but yes. If you are like, I don't know, if you're interviewing at like tech lead, principal engineering, VP, director level, I believe it's a way different interview than this. I'm not there yet, but I guess you can say, sure, like the dev lead on the specific ticket, but I'm not too sure if they look at you as a tech lead. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, maybe I'm being too literal.
No, not to worry about it. I think James got what he needed. I mean, he was just simply asking, should we see the other person if we're being interviewed as the tech lead? And James, they have some answers. So yeah, you should look at it like they have some of the answers, and there definitely make some assumptions if you want, verbalize them so that there isn't an assumption that you have that they don't. And definitely get them to give you answers to some things that might be like both might be okay. Have them choose which way to go. After all, they're testing you.
Well, the way I see it is that if I was given a test, I would like to lead the team into showing them how this problem can be solved in my own way, and I can share with them how it can be done. At least share my.
You're responsible for. Right, you're responsible for that. So if you're given a project of whatever magnitude or whatever size, whatever it is, you're not going to get into coding. You're not going to be, I know what to do. Like, you're going to have to write tech specs. You're going to have to write a BRD, business requirement doc. You're going to have to write like the whole software engineering process of like for example, whenever a product is before it's published, like main big tech companies, what they do is they write like a PR FAQ, kind of like what would the product look like already in the hands of the customer, and then before it's even coded to see if it even gets traction. So you are responsible for writing that. You are responsible for writing. Okay, once you have, what would the product look like user journeys, but like the whole like more wording, and then you get into tech spec. So you are in control of that, and that is what is expected of you. So this is kind of like a small sample size of what it would be like to have you on the team to see if you can even write something like that, which is, I'm telling you, is difficult.
Nice. So we have a question from Daniel. Says, any other tips for system design in architectural interview questions?
From what I've been getting, and from what I've been like looking up and things like that and whatnot, it's been mainly about scalability. Where would you store the data? Like what happens if availability crashes, right? So how are you gonna, I forgot the word, like fault?
Okay.
Like what happened today?
Right.
Like what's your fault system like?
Fault tolerance.
Fault tolerance. There you go. What's your fault tolerance? I like brain farted. What's your fault tolerance? Like what happens when a certain instance of a computer overloads? What's your auto scaling group like? Like things like that you got to think of. Are you going to write logs I'm going to put alarms in certain in certain places to capture any issues or whatever. So on system design, it really depends on like back end, like how does that work for you? How are you going to scale that? How are you going to make it available? How are you going to cache certain things? Are you going to use a CDN versus, you know, right there and then? So it really depends. I personally do not think that you're going to have to worry about system design questions in entry level positions. I don't know if things have changed, but I don't think you.
Well, there's we have all sorts of different people here, Jayce. There are people from the school, and then there are people that are quite senior and they've been here for a long time. Just a JavaScript group. But so Daniel's is I mean, I don't know if Daniel's at that level. I can't answer for Daniel. I don't know. I just joined him recently on LinkedIn, but that's about it. Daniel, one of the things I would say is also that there are some questions as a tech lead. I used to be a tech lead for Toyota. And as a tech lead, they ask me more personal questions, like how do I incentivize other developers to be this particular way? If there's a disagreement, you know, I mean, what do I do in that situation when I don't agree with one particular thing? It might be minute, might be very serious, and it might be minute for me and serious for the other person, or the other way around. You know, how do I deal with those type of questions? And definitely what Jayce has suggested, and I think it was Sagiv, I think that I heard say something else. So definitely there. Great answers. Thank you, Jayce. Any other questions from anybody else? Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can type it in there. All right. Daniel, thanks very much for your time. Jayce, I do as well. Kate?
Quick question, sorry.
Yes, go for it. Go for it, please.
This PowerPoint is going to be on, it's for Damien, sorry. This PowerPoint in this presentation is going to be on the website.
So you throw me a softball, and I appreciate that very much. So the actual slides, if Jayce provides them to me, I'll put them in the YouTube channel video that we'll see in there. So if you go to youtube.com/FloridaJS, being the group's name, you will find this video, and I'll make sure if Jayce provides me the presentations, put it there. If not, you will see the video of the presentation on there. So
okay,
to see it there as well.
Also, Jayce, I want to say thank you this is an awesome presentation. You're a winner. Thank you.
No, thank you.
That is fantastic.
Showing up.
Absolutely. So let's try that without me mute. Thank you very much, Jayce. You are Carl Jude has said it much better than I can. You are a winner. Absolutely fantastic. Great presentation. I think we're going to go ahead and stop. I'm going to go ahead and share my, whoops, let me see. I don't know if you guys can see. Let me minimize this. We always, at the end of these events, give you guys a free chance to win some JetBrains licenses. Jayce, you're included in this as well, of course. So go ahead and join me at win.floridajs.com. That link does work. I'm on a different URL, so you just go ahead, go to win.floridajs.com. As you can see, your tickets will come up there once they come up on your device or devices. I'll give you a hint there. Then they will appear on the screen, and in just a minute, we'll go ahead and choose one. Anybody interested? This is actually WebSockets, as boring as it is. Nothing fancy, nothing utilizing AWS, although my server did go down at the same time. I think it was just feeling that if AWS is going to go down, it's going to go down too. It's that kind of a server. It cares about you. You know what I mean? So does everybody have a chance? Is there anybody, you can go ahead and let me know in chat or unmute yourself if you're going to, if you're still signing up, finding how to go to win.floridajs.com. If you do see an error, just go ahead and let me know as well. Otherwise, I think we have some winners here. All right. Page is not working. Oh my. So are you going to win.floridajs.com? Is anybody else seeing the same thing? Please ask me and let me know in chat or unmute yourself. Let's go ahead and try that. What does a good developer do, right? Go into incognito mode and try it out there. Let's see if I also have the same problem. We're getting yes. Let's see, incognito mode. At least, oh my, there I go. I grabbed ticket number 2. How in the world did I get ticket number 2? That's a little bit strange. Okay. Nice. I think we have a little bit of unusualness going on in here, but that's perfectly fine with me. So we have a couple of tickets. It looks like you want to go ahead and refresh your page, because there's some interesting things going on in here. All right. We've had a very interesting conversation with everybody else. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and you can actually see it on your screen, and you can see it also on my phone. That I have a button on my device, and then I'm going to go ahead and press the button, and then we'll see who's the winner. Does everybody have a chance, or am I waiting on somebody that cannot get there? Wait, that's my number. I know, James, try it again. I promise you. I think you already won, James, know that, but you're welcome to do it. So if you ever can look at their own screen, you can do it on through mine. I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and then the right, oh my, it looks like it's not working. Let's refresh that page to find out what's going on here. Whenever there's a problem, make sure to refresh, right? Tell you what, I think we can only do this once in a while, once Meetup is down. What I want you guys to do is, if you haven't joined me yet, I want you guys to go ahead, guys, by the way, the word guys I'm trying to say is for both sexes, binary and non-binary. And I want you all to join me at Tech Hub South Florida /Slack. In there, you'll find the Slack channel. And then go ahead and sign up if you haven't. If you're already there, go ahead and contact me. Let me know you want which one of the licenses you'd like from JetBrains, and I will provide it. I have about 3 to give away, and I think we'll have some issues with the internet being down to actually have this working, because it doesn't seem to be working at this time. So not a big deal. It just means that you can have your chance to do it. So I know a lot of you wanted the license. Come on over and contact me. Find me on the Slack channel of Tech Hub South Florida at techhubsouthflorida.org/Slack if you're not already there. If you are already there, contact me there. I will give you your free license for being a winner. And JC, if you want it, you too can have the license, and we can have a great time all playing with our licenses. Thank you very much. Sorry about what happened earlier. Yes, no, Sebastian, tell us if you have something to say. Always interrupt me. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Oh, I was not the one interrupting, but I just want to say thank you to JC and you guys. This was good stuff for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for much for contributions as well, Sebastian. Great stuff that you're saying there. Thank you. We'll see you next month. Next month, January. I think it's the beginning of the year. We usually sort of skip January because it's kind of right after right after New Year's, and everybody's kind of like inebriated or whatever. So we might skip January. We'll have our next meeting on February. If you do want to present, if you think you have a better subject than the one I'm thinking of right now, and it's the wrong one, by the way, you have a better one than that, contact me again in Slack, or once meetup.com/FloridaJS is back, contact me through that link as well. I'll be able to, if you want to present, please, if you are a JC, come on over. And 80th anniversary, nice. Okay, so thank you very much for everything you do. Thank you, JC, for an amazing presentation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and I will see you at the next FloridaJS in February. See you then.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Evan.
Great to be here.
Thank you, James. Bye-bye. Thank you, Sebastian. JC, you're a rock star. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It was fun.